It was late, a Friday night. The city glowed with neon, and the rooftop bar hummed with the after-work chatter of lawyers, analysts, and interns. Marcus Hale, 35, sharp-suited and sharp-tongued, was drunk on success. He'd just landed a multi-million-dollar client for the firm, and people were celebrating him like a minor celebrity. Amidst the din of the crowded bar, Marcus noticed her. She was tall, quiet, elegant. Confidence radiated from her like an invisible perfume, drawing him in even as she held herself aloof. She wasn't drinking, wasn't laughing, wasn't here for the same reasons. That made her interesting. Marcus approached her, his confidence bolstered by his recent success. She didn't smile, offered one-word replies. He interpreted this as her playing hard to get, a challenge that only whetted his appetite. As the night wore on and the revelers began to disperse, Marcus saw the woman make her way towards the parking garage. On a whim, he followed her, uninvited and unannounced. "Hey," Marcus called out to her as she walked into the shadows of the parking garage. "Don't I know you from somewhere?" Without turning around, she replied, her voice cool and unwavering. "No, I don't think you do." Undeterred, Marcus quickened his pace, still convinced that he was charming her, that his persistence would win her over. But she was not amused. "Back off," she ordered, her voice rising in volume and authority. Marcus, however, was beyond hearing. He saw only the conquest, not the discomfort he was causing. With increasing audacity, Marcus grabbed her arm, but she wrenched herself away from his grasp. When he reached out again, her fist met his face with a crack. A cry of pain escaped his lips as a car alarm wailed in the distance. Filled with fear, Marcus turned and fled, his heels pounding the pavement as he vanished into the night. In the stark fluorescent light of his office at Wilshire and Bloom, Marcus sat at his desk, the fading bruise under his eye a constant reminder of his encounter with the woman. To his friends, he'd spun a tale of a bar fight gone wrong, but in his mind, he played down the incident, assuring himself that she wouldn't report him. After all, he hadn't really done anything, or so he told himself. He'd just scared her, maybe crossed a line. It was nothing, he thought. The lie, like a well-oiled machine, churned through Marcus's mind, each repetition smoothing the rough edges, making it more palatable, more believable. Just as he was beginning to settle into the comfort of his own deception, the door to his office opened, and in walked the managing partner. "We're introducing a new senior partner today, head of corporate risk." "Big deal," he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. Marcus, still groggy from the weekend's revelries, pasted on a fake smile and turned towards the conference room, ready to greet the new senior partner with his usual charm. But as he stepped forward, his smile faltered, his eyes locked onto the figure at the head of the table. It was her. "The woman from the parking garage," the narrator began. Only now she was transformed into a different character, a woman of authority. She wore a navy blazer, her face set in a serious, determined expression. A name tag was pinned to her lapel, which read, "Ms. Celeste Marrow, Senior Partner." Celeste surveyed the room with a slow, deliberate gaze, the narrator continued. Her eyes lingered on Marcus for the briefest of moments. There was no change in her expression, no hint of accusation in her gaze. It was a look of quiet, chilling recognition. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat as the color drained from his face. He knew that Celeste knew. Celeste remained silent, but the weight of her presence hung in the air like a shroud, the narrator explained. She didn't say a word that day, or the next. And yet, the absence of her voice spoke volumes. As for Marcus, he began to unravel. His mind was a whirlpool of anxiety and fear, dragging him down into the depths of his own guilt. The silence was deafening, and he felt as if he were walking on the edge of a blade, waiting for the moment when it would all come crashing down around him. The office became a house of cards, teetering precariously on the brink of collapse, the narrator continued. Every time Celeste walked by his office, Marcus's heart seized in his chest. Every email from HR sent a shiver of dread down his spine. Every closed-door meeting felt like the moment his carefully constructed facade would crumble to dust. But it didn't. The accusation never came. Celeste remained silent, her stoicism more menacing than any outburst could have been. In the face of the silence, Celeste set about a transformation within the firm, the narrator said. The company policies were reshaped with ruthless efficiency, forged into instruments of change. Strict new codes of conduct were established, their text like steel. Quiet one-on-one interviews with female staff became a regular occurrence, an investigation masquerading as a conversation. A new anonymous reporting system emerged, a specter of judgment haunting the halls, and seminars on workplace behavior, delivered with clinical precision, rang with the unspoken warning, "We see you." The shift was subtle but seismic. The winds of change. The armor of Marcus's arrogance began to crack, the sweat seeping through his starched white shirts like blood from a wound, the narrator intoned. He began to panic, his fear transforming into a desperate, grasping attempt to regain control. He sent Celeste an email, a carefully crafted plea for forgiveness. "If there's anything I've done to offend, I'd like to make it right," he wrote, his fingers trembling slightly as he clicked send. But Celeste did not respond. Not to the email. Not to Marcus's increasingly frantic attempts at atonement. Celeste's silence continued to echo through the halls of the firm, a haunting absence that spoke more than any words could have, the narrator said. And then, one day, Marcus was summoned to a meeting. It wasn't just any meeting. It was a reckoning. In a conference room, he found himself sitting across from Celeste, flanked by the specters of legal and HR. Celeste spoke without a trace of emotion, her voice as cold and sharp as the edge of a scalpel, the narrator reiterated. "There's been a report of misconduct involving you," she began, her words calm and methodical. "We've reviewed the evidence from the parking garage, taken statements from various employees, and your name has come up in connection with other inappropriate behavior." Marcus was paralyzed, trapped in the crosshairs of Celeste's unyielding gaze. Marcus, trapped in the web of his own lies, desperately tried to evade the truth. "I didn't know it was you," he stammered, his voice wavering, his eyes filling with tears. "I swear I didn't know." His protests fell on deaf ears. Celeste and the representatives from legal and HR remained unmoved, their expressions cold and professional. In that moment, Celeste finally turned her gaze upon Marcus, her eyes piercing through his facade like a lighthouse through fog. "It didn't matter who I was," she said, her voice steady and unyielding. "It didn't matter if I was a colleague, a stranger, a friend, or a loved one. My identity didn't change the nature of what you did. You still violated my boundaries. You still disrespected my autonomy. You still disregarded my humanity." The departure of Marcus Hale was a seismic event, a shifting of power dynamics within the firm that marked a turning point, the narrator recounted. And Celeste, whose voice had been silenced for too long, rose from the ashes of the old regime with a newfound strength and purpose. Her speech to the employees, a rallying cry for change, still echoed in the halls of the firm. "A woman's voice has finally found its rightful place in this company," she declared, her gaze intense and unwavering. And yet it was not Marcus Hale's name that would be remembered in the annals of the firm, but Celeste's, the narrator continued. For she had transcended the need to speak his name, for it was he who had become the shadow, and she who had become the light. The name that would be remembered was hers. The legacy that would be honored was hers. The mark that would be left on the world was hers, for she had broken the silence, she had shattered the boundaries, she had changed the game. And so Marcus Hale, once the golden boy of the firm, slunk away into the shadows, carrying with him the burden of his sins, both committed and almost committed. He fled the city, a fallen star, banished by the very light that had once illuminated his path to success. But the weight he bore was not just the shame of his actions, but the shame of his perception. For he had judged Celeste by how powerless she appeared, not by who she was. He had underestimated the strength of her spirit, the depth of her resilience. Justice is not always served in the halls of law, for it exists beyond the confines of a courtroom, the narrator intoned. And so it was that Celeste Marrow, in her triumph over the culture of silence, became more than a victim. She became a symbol of justice itself. A symbol that spoke not just to those who had suffered, but to those who would suffer no more. A symbol that said, "No more shall we be silenced, no more shall we be ignored, no more shall we tolerate the intolerable." Celeste Marrow became justice,